The number one reason why knitting projects fail is that the gauge is not right. And by gauge, I mean how many stitches do you have on 10 centimeters. The knitting pattern specifies which gauge you need to have. And if your gauge does not match that one, your garment simply won't turn out as it should. Your gauge is determined by 3 factors. The first one is how tightly you hold the needle and yarn. This is an individual thing and there's no right and wrong here, but we have to be aware of it. And this brings us to the second factor, and that is knitting needle. Me, myself, I am a very tight knitter, so I always need to go up a needle size. But if you are a loose knitter, then you should go down a needle size. And the third factor is the yarn. All yarn behaves differently. And that is why we need to knit a test swatch with a specific yarn, the specific needle, before casting on our new exciting project. So how do we knit a test swatch? Well, ideally we need to be able to measure 10 times 10 centimeters on the test swatch. But I have to admit that I cheat a little here because I think the width is more important than the height. So my test swatches are usually a bit shorter on the height. Often the knitted pieces become slightly looser or larger after they've been washed. That is why you should also wash your test swatch before casting on a new project. And I would advise you to take notes of the difference between before and after washing. This can help you have more control over the gauge while you knit. And finally, after washing and knitting your swatches, remember to write it all down. Write down the needle size you used, which yarn you used, which gauge you got before wash, and which gauge you got after wash, and if you knitted in the round or front and back. We do not want to do unnecessary work twice. Keep in mind that knitting test swatches, your gauge is often tighter when you knit in the round versus when you knit front and back. So I would advise you to knit 2 test swatch, one for knitting front and back and one in the round. And if you now manage to get the correct gauge, I am so certain that your next project will be so much more successful. Good luck!